So the meeting is being recorded for recording purposes. So today tutakuwa very fast.
Then leo tunafika saa ngapi?
Leo tunataka tujaribu haraka haraka ndio tuone itakuwaje. Leo tunataka tufike saa ngapi? Kwani una plan aje?
Kuna somewhere nilikuwa nataka I have another meeting but
inaanza saa ngapi ndio nijipange nimalize by hiyo time?
Hapo hatutafika saa 4.
Saa 4. Saa ngapi?
9 saa 4 9. I have something to attend at 9:20.
Wacha tujaribu tufanye within 40 minutes. Tujaribu 40 minutes, sivyo? So tujaribu 40 minutes. Sawa. So I hope mnaona board. So leo maswali za leo sio mchezo. So we are to do FIFO method. So FIFO method, but remember it is process costing. So we are still continuing with the process costing. Tunataka tujaribu tukue very fast. FIFO method, that is process costing. Yeah. Now, under FIFO, what we need to remember, so it is assumed, so this is what you need to remember, that under FIFO method, it is assumed that production is completed on basis of first in, first out. On a basis of first in, first out. So that is one. Of work in progress and closing. So it's a completion of opening. Sorry, it's a completion of opening. It's supposed to be opening. Work in progress. Completion of opening. Work in progress. And closing. Work in progress. And closing. Work in progress. And closing work in progress. Valued at the current cost. Valued at current period cost. So that's one of the things you need to remember when we talk about FIFO method. Continue. Sawa. Now, the method is suitable where the costs are relatively stable. So the method is suitable where costs are relatively stable. So the method is suitable where the costs are relatively stable. And then ya mwisho, opening work in progress keeps stability. Opening work in progress keeps its identity. So open work in progress keeps its identity. So in case of Kwambia, you write notes on FIFO method, then you shall write all those items. And then cost. Now the cost of output, cost of output completed, cost of output completed in a period. So cost of output completed in a period is worked in three parts. Is worked in three parts. It's worked in three parts. So we have number one, cost incurred in the current period. Cost incurred in the current period. Cost incurred in the current period to complete work in progress brought forward as number one. Number B, cost unit started and completed. Cost units started and completed. Cost units started and completed in the current period. In current period. Then the last one you can talk about cost of work started. Cost of work started. Cost of work started, but not completed. But not completed in the current period. In the current period. NB, our NB here. Now we have this NB, which is very, very important. So we have our NB there, which is very, very important. Now let's give that NB so that we can do the question for previous sitting. NB. So NB, where is that NB? I had noted somewhere. There's a note. Now, I'll just inform you. Let me inform you about the note. Let me look for that note. Go to the come of more even. So here is the note. So NB. Now this one, ignore cost of opening so ignore cost of opening work in progress for FIFO. This one is very, very important. Ignore the cost of opening work in progress for FIFO when computing value of cost per unit. Value of cost per unit. So that one is very, very important. You know here. So while computing the cost per unit using FIFO, then we shall ignore. Then it is important to ignore the cost of the opening work in progress. That one is very, very important. This one we must underline. So ignore the cost of opening work in progress for FIFO when computing the value of cost per unit. Now let us start a question. So screenshot kama hujaandika so that I start doing a question. So that question is for last sitting. That question is for last sitting. April 2022. April 2024, not 2022. April 2024. So I'm deleting this one. So April 2024. April 2024. Open funguange past paper. So that's that sitting. April 2024. So email. April 2024 question number 4B. April 2024 question number 4B. So that is that sitting. So I'm doing away with this one. So hopefully kila mtu ameshaandika. So I want to do away with this one. So the question is quite lengthy. So tutajikaza. So but the question is quite lengthy. So ni mrefu sana. So make sure you write everything because nikivuta we shall need some item baadaye. Sawa sawa. So let me read the question. Sawa sawa. Nilikuwa nafuta past paper kumbe yanisumbua siipati. Now the first step under this method, you remember you need to compute some item. You need to compute normal loss, then expected production, then you compute abnormal loss or gain, then you come up with the statement of equivalent units and so on. Nimefungua pale penye sio hiyo. Nimefungua FM. Let me look for okay, nimeipata. So I'm reading the question. The question is for AP 2024, question 4B. AP, that is last sitting. AP 2024, question number 4B. Now it reads this way. So part question number A. Summarize 4 features of process costing. We know some of the features, like process costing is a continuous process. We said that one. We also say that in process costing, we expect losses. So there is always a loss in process costing. We also say that output of one process becomes the input of the next process, and so on. So that one is fine. So I'm interested with part B. Vuna Ltd are manufacturing chemical for agricultural farm. One of their product passes through process P and Q. So we have only 2 processes there, P and Q, before it is completed and taken to the warehouse. The data related to process Q was as follows. So Q it is the last process. So process Q is our last process. So we have the opening work in progress, 4,000 units. Degree of completion with their cost, we have them 100%, 60, and 60, and then with their cost. But remember, hapa hawajakuambia the word input. Remember, input is always 100%. So hapa hawajasema, but you need to remember that input is always 100%. Number 2, units received from process P. So that is previous process. So the output of process P was 40,000 units, which was valued at 1.7, 1,750,000. That's a lot of money. Sawa. Then number 3, additional cost during the period. For process Q, we have the cost for the period. So we have material cost and overhead, that is for the period. And then closing work in progress, 3,000 units. It was valued at, we have material 100%, then labor and overhead 50%. Now, hapa hawajakwambia pia, you need to remember that input is also 100% na wajasema. Unit scrap 4,000 units. Degree of completion 100% for material, labor overhead 80 and 80%. So remember pia hapo hawajakwambia input. So you need to remember that input is always 100%. The normal loss is 5% of the expected production. No, the examiner ametumia the word expected production. It's not supposed to be the word expected production. It's supposed to be production units. It's supposed to be production units. So we cannot compute losses on expected production. It is very hard because we need to find the loss so that we can get the expected production. But now, ametuambia from the word expected. Now, that one was, I think, is an issue with typing. It's supposed to be production units. Then number 7, spoiled units, they arise at 15,000 for each unit. Use FIFO method of work in progress. So number 1. So step 1. So step number 1, we compute normal loss. So step 1. Mimi nisema nitakuwa nikienda na steps. Step 1, compute normal loss. And we say first compute normal loss. In this case, we start with the opening work in progress. We start with opening work in progress. So in our question, our open work in progress for pale juu. If you are to check pale juu, hapo juu ngapi wanasema the open work in progress is 4,000 units. So units, so remember that is in units. So 4,000. Now we need to add transfer. Now, which transfer are we supposed to add? We need to add transfer from the previous process. Now, which process are we preparing? We're preparing process Q. And therefore, transfers must be from the previous process, which is P. So we add transfers. So add transfers from process Q. So we add transfers from process P, not Q, for process P. So how much is the transfers? Information number 2, 40,000 units. So information number 2, 40,000 units. After that one, we need to less. We less. So we less closing work in progress. So we less closing work in progress. That is information number 4. The closing work in progress is 3,000 units. 3,000 units. So what will be our production units? So we can get now our production units. Let me use let me use calculator. Production. So what will be the total production units? So ukichukua 4,000 plus 40 units, 44,000 minus 3, that one becomes 41,000 units. 41,000 units. 41,000 units. Now we compute normal loss. So normal loss. So normal loss, we said it's a percentage of. So from previous classes, we say it's the percentage of production units.
Those production units are in for process Q.
Eh?
Are those production units for process Q?
We add transfers. Hata sijakuelewa.
I'm asking, I'm asking, we have
Yes.
41,000 production units. Are they for
Yes.
process Q? What we are computing now, is it for process Q or P?
It is for process Q, the current process Q. So the units for production units for process Q.
So we are answering Roman 1, question Roman 1.
Roman 1 wanasemaje we compute?
Or this is the way that we are supposed to do, even if we are not even, we have not gone to
This is
answer
the way,
question.
because you need these items venye zinapangana, you need them.
Because
the steps venye huwa tunafaa kufuata, but in an exam kama uko poa, then you can start at any point where you are comfortable.
Because I was in my view that assume we are we have like 3 processes.
Haina shida. Tuko na process kama ni kama 5. So this one one ni kama 5 hivi.
Okay.
But ni sawa tu. Answer hivi nikifanya any part pale kwa required nitakuwa nawaambia tumefanya.
I was saying assume that our production is going through 3 processes. Let's say not 2 processes as we have now.
Ikuwe ni kama 3.
3. You see, we cannot compute this way, because if we compute this way, maybe we will have been computing for process P na Q, then we will have also, let's say we have another Z, P, Q, and Z. How can we combine the 3?
Utafanya kando kando, utaanza na process, kama ni process 3, utaanza na the first process, compute their normal loss, their losses, ufanye process 1. Ukimaliza, you need the information from that process to do the next process. So utafanya moja mpaka ufike ya mwisho. Kama ile tulifanya ya September 2021, you remember? Unaweza uicheck. Iko na process 3.
Okay.
Yeah. So our normal loss in our question wametuambia pale information number 6 that our normal loss is 5% of the expected. Now they use the word expected. For me, I think that's an error. It's supposed to be production units. So it is 5%. So 5% of our production, which is 41,000. So how much units? How many? What is the normal loss in units? Remember, it is in units. So 5% of 41,000 is around 50 units. Now, after that, we can now find expected production. Remember how to get expected production? Expected production. And remember, we said expected production is supposed to be production units. Production units. We less our normal loss. less our normal loss units. Sijui kama unakumbuka hivyo. So that is all we said. Now we can find it. So our production units pale juu ni ngapi? We have 41 thousand. We minus 2050. We minus 2050. How much is that? So okay, minus 2050 na kwa 38. That
Expected production, eh?
Yes.
We said, expected production, we said, it is the unit input unit minus the normal loss.
Minus? Now, that's what niliwaambia ikuwe very keen. That one is where we don't have work in progress. Remember this one, we have work in progress. I said we have two kind of a scenario. That's why I had lesson 1, we said we shall not have any work in progress in that kind of in lesson 1. So all the questions that we did, they didn't have anything to do with work in progress. And therefore, for us to get the expected production, it was the input units, we minus the normal loss units. But now in this case, we have what we call work in progress. So bwana kwede so tulifanya ya average cost method nyuma yake, if ulikuwa umeandika, then we check for average cost method, expected production is the same as production units minus normal loss, because we had what we call work in progress. Sawa sawa.
Okay.
Sasa hapo kwa very keen, uko very keen in an exam, hapo ndio wanashikia watu. So now remember we said for us to get abnormal loss or gain, we can either do it in 2 ways. Number 1, either we compare expected with our actual. But in this question of ours, we don't have actual production. If you can see this question, we don't have actual production in this case. Now, the only way we can do this question is to compare normal loss with the scrap. So we said, so remember we said, and narudia pia, I want to repeat it again. We say for us to calculate abnormal gain or loss. So we are in step number 2 now. So that is required. So for study to required part A, we are required to compute. We are required to compute abnormal loss or gain. So it can either be loss or gain depending on the question. So according to this question, I said we compute what? They said we compute what? Question number 1. So they told us to compute abnormal loss. They said they told us to compute abnormal loss. Information about meaning. So this question doesn't have a gain because they are specific. So we compute abnormal loss. Now, so according to this question, the only way to compute abnormal loss, it is either you compare expected production, expected production. So you call number 1, you have 2 ways. Expected production, which is 38,950. You compare it with actual production. Now, in this question, actual production. No, actual production is missing. And therefore, we cannot calculate abnormal loss using this method because our actual production is missing. If you go to a question, hakuna mahali ametupatia a note telling us that the actual production of process Q was this and this, hawajatupatia. Meaning, for us to get this one, abnormal loss, abnormal loss. Now, you cannot use this formula. But I told you the other day that there's another way we can find abnormal loss. We can compare normal loss with the scrap value. You remember? So kama hiyo hakuna, then you opt for this one. So you compare normal loss. Na kwa our normal loss ndio hapa 2050, which is 2050. You compare it with scrapped value units, with scrapped units. Scrapped inaandikwaje? Scrapped units which are in scrap. Now from our question, let's go to our question. Let us find the scrap units. Now from our question, our scrap units is how much? Information number 4. Units scrapped were 4,000 units. Units scrapped were 4,000 units. Now you find the difference between the two. Now this one will be abnormal loss. Abnormal. So that is part A required. So part A to my answer. You the part A. So 2,000 minus 4,000. Hey, you're gonna calculator. So 2,000 minus 4,000. Time to me a simu. So 2,000 minus 2050 minus 4,000. It is 1950. Now what you need to remember is when the normal loss is less than scrapped, is less than the scrapped, then it is abnormal loss. But kama normal loss ni mingi than scrapped, then it's a gain. Then it is a gain. Si hapo tuko sawa kabisa? So hapo tuko sawa?
Yes.
So that is part A. Yes? Tuko sawa?
Yes.
So that is part A. So step number 1, we compute normal loss, of which kwa muuliza, but they wanted part A, they wanted us to compute abnormal loss, na ndio abnormal loss ndio hiyo. This is the amount 1950, which you say it is a loss. Then let us continue. After step number 1 and step number 2, now even before we go to the next step, we need to find our actual production. Now we know that our normal loss is 1950. It's 1950. So what is our actual production? What will be our actual production? So remember hapa, remember hapa, ukumbuke hapa, ukicompute using this formula, normal loss and scrapped, the difference between the two ni minus. But ukitumia hii, the difference between the two inakuwa a positive number, meaning for us to get abnormal loss in this case, expected must be more than actual. You need also to remember that one. Expected must be more than actual. And therefore in this case, this one must be positive. Unafaa ukumbuke hiyo. Tulikuwa tumesema pale nyuma. So what will be the actual production? So for us to get, so which figure itakuwa hapa ndio tupate 1950? So obviously itakuwa ni 38,750 minus 1950, which is 37. So hiyo wako mpeana. And remember this one is very, very important because we need this one to compute what we call the statement of equivalent units. So we need that one to compute the statement of equivalent units. Now let's go to step number 3. Step 3. So I will share the video also. Now step number 3 wanatuambia in this question of ours. So step number 3 always compute the statement of equivalent units. Of which kwa swali ni part B. Statement of equivalent units. Statement of equivalent units. Statement of equivalent units. Juu kama inaonekana now. So under FIFO ni tofauti na vile tulifanya kwa average. Now make sure uende uangalie vile tulifanya kwa average method na vile tunafanya hapa. And then you note the difference. Now under this one, this is the formula. I want to give you the formula so that it's confused. So I want to give you the formula. So this is the formula. So for us to get the total effective units, total effective units. Now we need to calculate total effective units. So this is the formula. So you start with complete units. So you start with complete units. So ukisha add complete units, then you add closing work in progress, closing work in progress, and then because we have abnormal loss, then we add abnormal loss. If gain, we less abnormal loss. But remember, if gain, we add. But because in loss, we if gain, we less. But if loss, we add. So ukipata abnormal gain hapa, ukipata ni gain hapa, then hapa uta less. But because in loss, now we shall add it back. And then we less opening work in progress. We less opening work in progress. We less opening work in progress. So those are the items that we have. We don't have any other item. So those are the items that we need. Now let us come up with our table. So I will shift this kidogo. I'm going to shift it up somewhere around there. So we're going to come up with a table. So another element of cost. So element of cost. Then to indicate current period. Current period. Then to gani? Opening work in progress. So opening work in progress also for current period, remember. So opening work in progress. Opening work in progress. You also need closing work in progress. Closing work in progress. Abnormal loss. Abnormal loss. Abnormal loss. Au pia tunahitaji what? Tunahitaji complete units. Complete units so that we can have our total effective. Hapo inaonekana hadi hapo. Total effective units now. So this is what they require us to do. So mimi naichora in form of a table. Inakwanga hapo kiweka in form of a table. So it is good ukiweka in form of a table. Sawa sawa. Now the first item tunaanza na input. We start with our input. Now remember we said our input is always 100%. Remember we said our input is always 100%. That one is very, very important. You need to remember that one. Now, for current period, you compare the current period here with, so I'm going to compare current period with opening. Now, it was an opening, easy. Now, let's go to our opening work in progress kwanza from our question. Our opening work in progress equal information number. Our opening work in progress. We need to go to that one. So our opening work in progress in ngapi? Let's go to our question there. So our opening work in progress is 4,000. 4,000. Umeiona hiyo 4,000? But remember, for input, we know it is 100% complete. Hapa ametuambia. So 100% complete of what? Of 4,000. This one will be equal to what? 4,000. Now, for current period, because it's 100%, meaning for current period, it is 0%. It is 0%. You need to remember this one. It is 0%. 0% of 4,000. So for kama hapa ni 100, hapa ni 0. Kama hapa ni 50, hapa ni 50%. Kama hapa ni 80%, hapa ni 20. So this one will be equal to 0. So that one is number 1 for input. Nataka itoshea, utafika kama itakubali kutoshea. But lazima tuweke. Number 2, material. Now for material, let us go to the first one. So the first one natuambia degree of completion for opening work in progress. For input unajua ni 100%. For material also 100%. Material also information bado number 1, 100% complete of 4,000, which is 4,000. Kumaanisha hapa ni ngapi? 0% of 4,000, which is 0. Next ni labor. So labor wamesema ni ngapi? Labor wamesema ni 60 na pia overhead ni 60. So labor ni 60 na overhead ni 60. Tutaenda kwa labor. So kama ni 60% of 4,000. So 60% of 4,000 ni ngapi? Which is 2,000? 2,400. 2,400. Kumaanisha hapa ni ngapi? Kumaanisha hapa ni 40%. 40% of 4,000. So unaangalia kama hapa ni 60 hapa ni. So the current period ni the remaining part. So this one is around 16. I think 1,600. I think 1,600. Then ya mwisho, tumalizane ya mwisho. Depende kwa hizo zingine. We need to kujaza hii table kabisa mpaka ijae. So hii table mpaka ijae. Yeah? Sikusikii mzuri.
Why are we using 4,000 that I can see we have been given material is 240.
Unaona? Ebo na kwa story yetu pale juu.
144,000.
144.
Why are we using the 4,000 eh? And I can see we have been
Ukumbuke
given
kila kitu.
the
Remember,
240,000 and 1.
Ona from step 1, ukumbuke from step 1 up to step 4,
we are
tunatumia
given
unit.
144, then another one to 40,000. Oh.
Ukumbuke tunatumia units from step 1 mpaka step 3. Tunatumia 2 units. Hatutumii cost. That's why tulisema read information number 1. Information number 1 inatuambia the opening work in progress is 4,000. Umeona hiyo 4,000?
Yes.
So hapo tunatumia units peke yake. That's why wanasema the statement of equivalent units. Hakuna cost. Alafu kiangalia part next, angalia ilikuwa required, angalia part 3, prepare statement of cost. Maana statement of cost. So hapa lazima utumie cost. So maana tofauti penye inatokelezea.
Yes.
So unaona step 1, tukianza na step 1 unatumia units. Units una ignore kama cost iko you ignore. Ukienda step number 2, you also use units. You ignore cost. Ukienda step number 3 kwa statement of equivalent units, you also ignore cost. Unatumia 2 units. Na tumesema tunaanza na hii ya kwanza, opening work in progress. Na tunaenda nao pale juu. Opening work in progress pale juu ni 4,000. Alafu ametupatia pale chini the degree of completion. But remember kwa hii swali yetu hawajatupatia inputs. So nilikuwa nimekuambia mahali ukienda kwa hii notes pale nyuma kuna mahali nilikuwa nimewaambia you put an NB that input is always 100%. Input is always 100%. Hata swali kupatia ama kupatia uko unajua wakati unafanya hizo maswali za work in progress, FIFO method or average method. Input is always 100%. Na tukaanza na ya kwanza hapo. Ukiangalia pale wametuanzia na material, wajanza na input. So sisi tunajiwekea because tunajua by fact that input is 100%. So 100% of 4,000 ni 4,000 inabaki hivyo. Now uko sawa. So tukitengeneza opening at the same time unatengeneza the current period units. Now if it is 100% in the opening work in progress, then ukumbuke for current period ni 0. So kama ni 100% ingie ni 0. Kama ni 60%, then the remaining one is 40. So the other one is 40. So una multiply na the same units for opening, both current na opening. And then tuende ya mwisho ni overhead. Also overhead umetuambia ni 60. Overhead. So tunajua hapa ni 60% of 4,000, which is 2,400. Kumaanisha hapa ni ngapi? Remaining 40% of 4,000, which will be equal to 2,400. Si hapo tuko sawa? Now tukuja kwa huyu. Now let's go to closing work in progress.
1,400, eh? It's 1,400.
1,600. 1,600, sivyo? 1,600. 40% of 4,000. Hivyo. So iko sawa mpaka hapo? Now let's go to closing work in progress. So tuende kwa our swali. Information number 4. The closing work in progress is 3,000. Umeiona? Then you have the degree of completion. Remember wajatupatia inputs. So back in your mind, you know inputs is 100%. So 100% of 3,000. Remember it is units. That one becomes 3,000. And then wametuambia material 100% complete 3,000, which is the same as kusema 3,000. Then what about labor? So labor pale wanatuambia ni ngapi? So labor and overhead in 50% complete. So in 50% complete. So 50% of 3,000 is equals to 1,500. Now 50% of 3,000, which is equals to 1,500. Umeona hapo tumeifanya? So hapo hadi hapo I think iko sawa. Now we also need to jaza hii abnormal loss. Abnormal loss. Now abnormal loss inaendana na scrap value. Or no, not scrap value. We have it here. Inaendana na scrap value degree of completion. We have it here 1950. So non abnormal loss ndio 1950. But inaendana na the so the degree of completion inaendana na the scrap value. So let's go to scrap value. Our scrap value part of the degree of completion hatuna input. So but we know it's 100%. But tujapatiwa 1950, which remained to be 1950. Haya, material ametuambia ni 100% times 1950, which remained to be 1950. Alafu hapo tu kwa scrap value, the rest ametuambia labor and overhead ni 80%. So 80% of 1950. So the others ni 80%. So labor and overhead na pia mwingine ni 80% of 1950. So 80% of 1950 ni 1560. 1560. 1560. Now, what's our completed units? Martin to GBA, I know you know, it's our actual production. It's our actual production. What's our actual production? So complete units is our actual production. So what's our actual production? Our actual production ndio hii, that's 7,000 tulipata hapa. So 37,000, 37,000, 37,000, 37,000. So add everything. Now remember, ignore this one. Wakati na calculate effective units, you ignore the current period. Ndakwambia penye inakujia. For now, tuna ignore it. So we start with, tulisema we add. So we're supposed to add this one. We add complete units. We add closing work in progress. We also add abnormal loss. And then we less opening work in progress. So huyu plus huyu minus huyu unapata huyo. Then huyu plus huyu minus huyu unapata huyu. Then huyu plus huyu minus opening work in progress utapata. So what will be the figures? So we want to this one. So you ignore. So ignore this one. Huyu atakujia kwa nini? Huyu atakujia pale pengine. For now, huyu atumtumii for now. So ukimwad total effective units ya part A ni ngapi? Tunataka unipe answer ndio nione kama you are following. So for input, so how much is the input? Ndio tumalize kitu haraka.
Are we submitting all the totals excluding the current period?
Una exclude huyu. But remember huyu ni minus. Huyu una minus. So inakuwa that 7,000 plus 19. So unachukua complete units, una add abnormal loss. Ndio formula. This is the formula hapa juu. This is the formula for FIFO method. This one is for FIFO method. FIFO method. So unaanza na complete units huyu, you add closing work in progress, you add abnormal loss, then una minus open work in progress. So utapata ngapi ya kwanza? So ukilipia ya kwanza nitajua uko sawa. Umepata ngapi? Total effective units. And that hiyo tutakuwa tumeshajibu part. Ukishafanya tukishajaza hizo total effective units tutakuwa tumeshajibu part what? Tutakuwa tumeshajibu part 2 which is 4 marks.
37,950.
Yes. 37,950. Na umenotice zinafanana ya pili. So hata ya pili pia ni 37,950 juu zinafanana. So ya tatu itakuwa 37,660 na pia hapa 37,660. So make sure unazi note down kwa sababu tutahitaji table baadaye. Now tumeshajibu part. That is step number 3. Now step number 4 sijui nifanyie hapa juu. I think itatoshea. Step 4. Step 4, we need to come up with statement of cost. Sijui kama inaonekana ama nimeenda juu sana. So statement of cost. So step number 4. So hii ndio step tutakuwa tunatumia. Tutakuwa tunatumia hata kwa exam. So statement of cost. Now statement of cost, we need it because we need to calculate cost per unit. Statement of cost, step number 4. So remember we start with element. So hapa tuko na element of cost. Then we need total cost. Total cost. We also need total effective units. And then ya mwisho cost per unit. Sijui kama inaonekana. Cost per unit ndio ya mwisho. So cost per unit. Kama kawaida you need to incorporate everything. Tunaanza na input, material, labor na overhead. Tena niandike mzuri, tunakaa presentable. Tunasema input, material, labor, then overhead. Aha. Tunahitaji hizo. Very, very important. This one is very, very important because without this one, now, and then kumbuka the last thing hapa, you take hapa chini ni cost per unit in total. Cost per unit, total cost per unit. Let me write it. Total cost per unit. So that is the part zile tunafanya. Total cost per unit. Hapo inaonekana. So tuanze na ya kwanza. So hapa ndio so kuna NB niliwaambia muandike pale tukianza na FIFO. What was the NB? Kuna NB. Hiyo NB ilikuwa inasema aje? Nataka unisomee because that NB is very very important.
Ignore cost of opening work in progress
When computing
value of cost per unit.
Yes. Now, but remember, for average, hatuko tuna ignore. Ukienda kuangalia sasa tulifanya ya average, hatuko tuna ignore. Tulikuwa tuna incorporate. Hapa, you need to ignore. So make sure you note hiyo tofauti pia. Kwa average cost method, tulikuwa tunafanya nini? Tulikuwa tuna incorporate. Hapa, we need to ignore it. Now, let us go to our question. Now, our cost ni gani for opening work in progress? Unaiona? 240, 144, 72. You ignore those costs. Umeziona? 244,000, 144,000 and 72,000. Umeziona? Kwa information number 1.
Yes.
So that cost una ignore. Now, because we are preparing the settlement cost of process Q, we shall start with the output of process P. Now, the only output of process P tuko nayo ni information number 2. Do you see the cost? 1,700, 550, 000. Yes, so hiyo ndio cost tutaweka hapo kama input. So the rest for the pale juu we ignore everything. But kama ingekuwa ni average method tungezi add zote pamoja. But because sasa hizo hapa tuna ignore. So we calculate the input. So we need to calculate this input. Now this input, for to get that input cost, we need to get that value that was the output of process 1, we less our normal cost, our normal loss cost. So what's our input cost? It is 1,700 and 1,000. Tuweke in 1,000 ikue figure ndogo. Let us put it in 1,000 so that ikue 17,00550. So itakuwa sawa. 17,00550. So wacha nika squeeze hapa. Kwa hivyo kanatosha. Hiyo ni tunahitaji working in this part. The rest hazihitaji working. So input. So you have, for us to find it, you need 1,700 and 550. Now we need to minus our normal loss. Now our normal loss, we have our normal loss of 2050. So tulikuwa tunapata normal loss of 2050. Na ndio hapa juu, hapa. Kama unaiona ndio hapa normal loss 2050. Now we need to less our normal loss of 2050. But remember this one is in units. Na hii ni cost. So we need to convert this one to cost. So how do we get it? We multiply it with, so our normal loss, to get the normal loss, tunachukua the normal loss units, we multiply with the scrap units. So what is the scrap cost? Information number 7. The scrap cost is sold at what? 15,000 times 15,000. So tunaweka 15 kwa sababu tumeweka in 1,000, now 15 usiweke in 1,000. So weka 15, not 15,000, weka 15 kwa sababu ile ya kwanza 17,500, 550 tumeweka in 1,000. So jitumeka 17,000, so inafaa iambatane. So itakuwa 1,700 and 550 minus 2050 times 15. Hiyo 15 tumeweka pia in 1,000 ndio ziambatane. So how much will be that cost of the input? So hapo ndio tofauti.
Why are we multiplying? Why are we multiply this figure with 15,000?
Tumesema for you to get the input cost, we need to get the transfer from process P. Then we less the normal loss. But remember the transfer from process P, information number 2. Let's go to information number 2. The transfer from process P ni 1,700 and 550 na 03 mwisho. So that one is a cost. So that cost, we need to less the normal loss cost. So how do we get the normal loss cost? We say the normal loss cost is equals to, unakumbuka? Normal loss cost is equals to the normal loss units multiplied with the scrap value per unit. Tunakumbuka? Tulifanya huko nyuma. Unafaa kuwa na review kitu sana. So for us to get the normal loss cost ndio hii. So tunachukua that transfer, we raise our normal loss amount. And our normal loss amount, the normal loss units, normal loss in units, we multiply with cost per unit for the scrap value. Now scrap value per unit iko pale chini. The scrap units is 15,000 per unit. So nimeweka 15 kwa sababu nimeweka hii in thousand. Okay. Siko sawa? So that will become, ukimultiply, ukitoa itakuwa 16, itakuwa 669,800. So hapa tu ndio kuna issues, the rest sasa tunaweka venye ziko. Material unachukua venye iko. So material kwa swali ni ngapi? Pale chini, tunaamka chini. Current period cost for Q 759,000. So iko in 1000 pia. So tunaweka kila kitu in 1000. 759,000. Haya, huyo mwingine labor 1355 760. So 1355 760, and then wa mwisho 640 to 20. 640 to 20. These are the kind of period cost. So kumbuka hapo unachukua the transfer una minus the normal loss. Hiyo tu ndio ya maana. Transfer you less the normal loss. So transfer from which transfer? Kama tunapini ya process Q. So unaangalia process yenye nyuma yake. Process yenye nyuma yake ni P. So transfer from process P you less the normal loss in amount. So the normal loss in amount in 2050 times 15. Tuko sawa. So this one is in 1000 to make in 1000. This one is in 1000. Now, in total effective units tulikuwa tumecalculate hapa, una transfer to 37,950. Yeah, next 37,950. Yeah, next 37,660. 37,660. So to get the cost per unit tunachukua huyu, una divide by huyu. Huyu divide by huyu. Huyu divide by huyu, huyu divide by huyu. So tuanze na kwanza, cost per unit for input 1669,800 you divide by 39,950. How much is that? So 1669,800 divided by 39,950. This is around 44. Siko unapata 44 cost per unit. Then wa pili naona ni 20, 36 na 17. Then you add the total. So you add them together. So kizi add zote, so 44 plus 20 plus 16 plus 17 na upatia total cost per unit ni 117. Umeiona? Hadi hapo tumejaribu, sivyo? So that one was part. So cost per unit, step number 4, according to our swali. So according to our swali, so required part 3, statement of cost ndio hiyo. Statement of cost ndio hiyo, and then part ya mwisho, part 4, we are required to prepare process Q account. Now before we prepare the process Q account, let us come up with some other workings. So we need some other workings. So I will share these recordings with you in your groups. So don't worry. Now, let us do step number 5 before we do step number 6, which is the process Q account. So me wanna prefer kufanya hizo steps ndio ikuwe rahisi kufanya hii swali. Now, narudi huko at the beginning. Tulianzia, I want to delete. Not to delete, I want to rub. So tulianzia. So hopefully ulikuwa ukiandika, but usijali, the video will be there anyway in your group. Now, step number, so this one, so statement of cost was step number 4. Now I want to go to step number 5. Step number 5. So I want to go to step number 5. Ndio tumalize kitu haraka haraka. So step 5. Step 5, computation of normal loss amount. Computation of normal loss amount. So computation of normal loss amount. Number 2, closing work in progress. What else do we need in our account? Abnormal loss. We also need abnormal loss. Abnormal loss. We also need abnormal loss. So we also need abnormal loss. And then the last one, which it is sometimes hectic, output. So output sometimes it is hectic when computing. But sometimes inakuanga very hectic. Now tuanze na kwanza, which is straightforward. Tuanze na zenye ni straightforward. For example, normal loss amount. Normal loss amount. So when we get the normal loss amount, tunachukua the normal loss figures, the normal loss units, which was tulikuwa tumekagua pale nyuma, you remember. Normal loss units, which is 2050. We multiply with the scrap units. Nimesema tunaweka kila our answers ziko in 1000. So ziko in 1000. So usishangae mbona naweka 15 and 15,000. So iko in 1000. So 2050 times here is 30. So this one is equal to Kenya shillings 30, 750. We also need closing work in progress. Closing work in progress. Now for closing work in progress, we need these items. You remember, let us go to our statement, this one. Ndio maana sijavuta. So for us to get to the closing work in progress, we need these items. You remember this one? We have 3,000 for input. We have 3,000 for material. We need 1,500 for labor and overhead 1,500. So we need those units to find the closing work in progress. But remember, we need to multiply them with cost per unit. Now, so utakuwa unachukua hivi. So unachukua together. So we are closing work in progress ndio hii hapa. Ndio column yake. 3,000 for input, you multiply with the cost per unit for input, which is 44. Unaiona hapa? Ndio hii hapa. Sijui kama inaonekana. Then unaenda kwa material, closing work in progress ni 3,000 still. You multiply the cost per unit hapa ni 20. Labor, closing work in progress ni 1,500. Closing, you multiply with 36. For overhead, closing work in progress in 1,500. You multiply with 17. I hope umeiona hiyo, so that nikiandika usishangae inatoka wapi. So let us go the other side. So tumesema tunaanza na material. So we are starting with the material. So tumeona ni ngapi? 3,000. We multiply with cost per unit, which is 44. So remember, this one is also in 1,000. Kwa sababu our cost per tuliweka in 1,000. Cost statement it was in 1,000. So everything is in 1,000. So next it is 3,000 still times 20. And then 1,500 times 36 plus 1,500, still 1,500 times 17. So that one we shall get the closing work in progress. So when we multiply the total, utapata around 271,500. 271,500. Then you also need abnormal loss. Abnormal loss. Abnormal loss. Now for abnormal loss, let me nikurudishe pia huku tena kidogo. Let me nikurudishe huku kidogo tena where we calculated these items. So now this item is very, very important, especially this one, settlement of equivalent units, the settlement of cost, they are very important. Now abnormal loss ndio hii hapa kama unaiona. We have 1950, 1950, 1560 and 1560. Now tunaanza na input. So input hapa 1950, you multiply with cost per unit 44. Material hapa ni 1950, you multiply with material hapa ni 20. Labor hapa ni 1560. You multiply hapa na labor ni ngapi hapa? Cost per unit 36. Overhead hapa ni 1560. You multiply with cost per unit hapa ni 17. I hope umeiziona. I hope zimeonekana, so I want to go back to the other side. So in case tutakuwa na swali utaniuliza tu, but I think it is self-explanatory according to the way we are doing it. Tunaifanya. Now, so it will be equal to, tumesema ya kwanza ni 1950. So 1950, we multiply the cost per unit 44. Still, next one is 1950. We multiply with the 20. Then 1560. So next, we multiply with 36. Then 1560, we multiply with 17. So ukimultiply hii utapata ngapi? When you multiply this one, utapata 207,480. 207,480. So kama you are getting the same thing. Now tumebakisha tu kitu moja hapa, which nimewambia sometimes inakuanga hectic, huwa inasumbua. That one, output. So make sure you are recording those figures because we shall need them. So let us do the last one, which is our output, so that we can come up with our process Q according to the equation. So tunasonga kidogo huku, mmeandika kama hujaandika utapata kuta tuna video. Utakuta tuna hiyo video kwa group kule. So hiyo swali tuko karibu kumaliza, and that one will be the end of process costing for work in progress. That one will be the end of process costing. So this one to start tukimaliza, it will be the end of process costing for work in progress, so that we can introduce something else. So here anaweza vuta, sisi tumeshafanya. Let me just do away with it because already we have it. So because tumeshafanya, nimeivuta, nimeamua ni do away with it because already tumeshaiandika chini. Tumeshaiandika chini. Now we need to compute output now. So you need to remember here now, hapa now vitu zinaanza zikibadilika. So this one. So remember for the previous method that we did for average cost. So kama we manage kuona hiyo video na pia class ulikuwa. So kama ukiangalia hiyo, for us to get the output, we were taking the complete units to multiply with cost per unit. Complete units for material, input, labor, and overhead. To multiply with the cost per unit. So we take the complete units, we multiply with cost per unit. That is for average. But in this case, we cannot do that one. We cannot. What we do, we shall use the current period. Remember the current period in niwaambia tuweke star? Nikijua singevuta. Anyway, if we go back to our statement of equivalent units, tulianza na current period units. So your current period units niwaambia mweke star. The first one was 0, second material was 0, labor 1600, overhead 1600. Nimefanya makosa kuivuta, but ni sawa tu. Anyway, so that one is in our statement of equivalent units. We shall check in our statement of equivalent units that in that case now, here we shall use that one to compute the output. So this is how you compute it. You start with the opening work in progress. You start with opening. You start with the opening work in progress cost. Now it was valued at what? How many units? 4,000. So what was the total cost? So we need to put the total cost here. The total cost, we add them together. So tuende pale juu, information number 1. Wanatuambia the open work in progress is 4,000 units. Then their cost ziko hapo. We have material to 40, labor 144, overhead 72. Add them together. So add them together. So 240 plus 144 plus 72,000. So remember it is in thousand. So now add them together. Remember to make it in thousand. Our sorry to be make it in thousand. So pale juu open work in progress information number 1. So hapo inaonekana to 40,000 plus 144,000 plus 72,000. Ukiadd them together inakuja 456,000 if I'm not wrong. 456,000. After that one, we add current period cost. We add
What are we computing here?
output. We are computing output. Ama ionekani? Inaonekana?
Haionekani vizuri.
Haionekani vizuri. Oh, poleni. Let me put it chini kidogo. Pole. So hapa we are computing output. So here we are computing output. So tumesema we start with the opening work in progress. Which is 4,000, which is our last working actually. Which is tumesema in step number 5. Step number 5 tumesema computation of normal loss, amount, closing work in progress, abnormal loss na output. So tumeshafanya normal loss, closing work in progress na abnormal loss. So tumebakisha output. So tumesema tuna add zote. So Kenya shillings. So in thousand. So ukienda pale juu ukiadd zote together. Penye yangu imeisha hii nini? 56,000. So that one is output. Now tukishapata hiyo, then we need to add current period cost. So add current period cost. But remember you multiply with cost per unit. So tuanze ya kwanza input. So tuenda kwa statement of equivalent units. Nataka uniambie. Let us go back to our statement of equivalent units. So what was the input for input? Tunaanza na input. Ilikuwa ngapi? Input.
What was the current period
units? For statement of equivalent units. Yes.
$4,000.
Sio 4,000. Current period. Hebu angalia vizuri. There's
zero. It's zero.
That one is for opening work. For open work in progress, the input was 100%. So 100% of 4,000 is 4,000. The other one was, we said kama opening ni 100%, the other one is 0%. So 0% of 4,000?
Zero.
Yes, it is 0. You could be very keen hapo, unakuwa very keen. So it's 0. So 0 times cost per unit. What was the cost per unit for input? From our statement of cost, ilikuwa ni 44. Aya, tukienda kwa next. What about material?
Zero.
0 still. So 0 times. So cost per unit for material ni ngapi? Next ni 20. Aya. Labor. For labor?
1,600.
Yes, 1,600. So 1,600 times 36. And then ya mwisho, overhead, also 1,600 times 17. So what would be the figure? So kiasi zote itakuwa ni around 84,800. So mimi napata 84,800. Acha nisongeshe hii hapa. Inafanya nini? Kenya shillings in thousand. 456,000. Hadi hapo tuko sawa? Then the mwisho we add, so in the mwisho we add cost of completed units. So what was the completed units? Kwa swali yetu pale kwa statement of equivalent units, we had completed units. Ilikuwa ngapi? Completed units. Completed units inamaanisha total effective units. So what was our total effective units? So hapa, this is the formula. Unachukua complete units. Complete units. So unachukua complete units. Una minus opening. Work in progress. Then you multiply with total cost per unit. Total cost per unit. So you're supposed to add that one. So ni ngapi? So complete units tusema ni ngapi? Complete units, another name of complete units ni total effective units. So what is our total? Not total. Wait, not total. What am I saying? Complete units ni actual production. Complete units ni actual production. What was actual production from our question? Or the completed units kwa statement of equivalent units. Let's go to hiyo table yetu ya statement of equivalent units. Kuna hiyo column ya complete units. Ilikuwa ngapi? Just one, pick one, material, labor, cost is the same. Complete units?
37,000.
Yes.
37,000.
Yes, that's 7,000. Now you will less our open work in progress in units. Remember, this one is in units. Units. Then you have 4,000. Then you multiply the cost per unit. So what is the cost per unit total to get those together? Kwa statement of cost. Let's go to the statement of cost. Kwa statement of cost ilikuwa ngapi? Ilikuwa 117, sivyo? Ukiadd them together. Ilikuwa 117. Najua na
yes.
Ilikuwa 117. So that 7,000 minus 4,000 times 117. So that we can complete now our process account. 38, 61,000. So total, this is our output now. So maana hii ni hectic ya the other average cost method ilikuwa rahisi. Ni kuchukua tu complete units hii na multiply with the total units. So complete units na multiply na complete units ile average. But hii lazima uanze na opening, you add the current period cost, then you add the completed units to get the output, which is 4,401,800. Now we can comfortably come up with our process account, process Q account. So comfortably now we can prepare that account without stress. So do we prepare wapi? Ama itatoshea hapa kwa hii next hapa. Jika itatoshea hapo. We try there. Tujaribu hapo, let us see. Tujaribie hapa. Hopefully itatoshea. So process Q account. So it is in 1,000. Uko sawa mpaka hapo? So tunaanza na open work in progress. The first thing you start here with is opening work in progress. Now, what's open work in progress from our swali? So open work in progress need transfers. It was the transfers. Ilikuwa ngapi? Information number 2. Let's go to information number 2. Tunaanza na hiyo kwanza. So tunaanza na open, tunamalizia na opening. So transfers ni ngapi? 1,700 and ndio hapa. 1,700 by 50. So kumbuka nimeweka in 1,000. So nimetoa hiyo 0.3, nimeweka pale juu in 1,000. So that is opening work in progress. Then tukisha maliza hiyo tunaenda kwa input. Our input. Now our input, we know our input ni ile pale juu, tukianza pale juu. Una add zote. The degree of completion we have 240. Nimewa confused. Now our input ndio ya kwanza. Poleni. Now our input ndio hii. This is our input 1,705.50. That is our input. Then I open work in progress iko pale juu. 240,000 plus 144 plus 72. So una add zote tatu. 240,000 plus 144 plus 72 inakuja ngapi? Inakuja around 456. 456,000. 456,000. So open work in progress ni ile ya kwanza kabisa pale juu. Open work in progress which is 240,000. Information number 1. 240,000 plus 144,000 plus 72,000. I think inakuja 456. Then our input is information number 2. 1,700 550. Tumetoa 03 ndio iko in 1000. Kama venye pale juu wameka in 1000. Then we also need material. Wametupatia hapo. Material. So according to this question, material is 759,000. 759,000. Then we have labor. Labor wametupatia kama ngapi? 1355. 1355. 760. 1355. 760. And then we have overhead. Overhead. So overhead ni ngapi? 640. 640 to 20. Now we need normal loss. Normal loss. Now our normal loss ndio hii hapa. Tuko tumecalculate, let me go back to our normal loss niwaoneshe penye iko. Our normal loss umeona hapo 30 750. Sijui kama mnaiona ndio hii hapa. Our normal loss hapo 30 750, so tunarudi huku. So we go back to here, tunaiweka hapa 30 750. After normal loss we need abnormal loss. Abnormal loss. So mimi nimeweka AL. A loss. A loss meaning abnormal loss. N means normal loss. So abnormal loss. So abnormal loss kuja huku tuangalie tulipata ngapi? So abnormal loss huku tulipata 207,480. 207,480. 480. Then we need our output. So 207,480 ndio nimeandika hapo. Unaiona? 207,480. So 207,480. What else do we need? We need our output. We calculate our output. So our output. So output ndio hapa katikati. Ndio hapa. Mnaita mnaiona ndio hii hapa. Our output ndio huyu hapa. 44 01 800. And then kitu ya mwisho we need ni closing. Namalizia na closing work in progress. Now our closing work in progress kwa tumecalculate pale. Our closing work in progress kwa tumecalculate pale, mnaiona 271 ndio hapa. Ndio kama inaonekana 271,500 hapa. 271,500. So na move huko. So 271,500. 271,500. Now add them together. It must balance. So add them together. It must balance. So and then you shall confirm with me. So that one marks the end of this class. I think to may cover that question. So kuna kitu tujafanya hapo chini yake, tuambie we calculate abnormal loss account. But that one is not an issue. So that one we shall do it. So find it and then mniambie kama ina balance. So ya kwanza ukiadd inakuja ngapi? So hopefully, part of YouTube, madam, will like, I will share the video in YouTube. So you like my videos. So you like my videos, I will appreciate. So you like and you subscribe. So Kiad, so I'm waiting for you people to tell me. So Martin, I think you are the only person now very active. So Ngapi, okay, add the debit side. So you remember we said all the costs in process account, all costs are debited. So any kind of cost you make sure you debit them. So any kind of cost you debit in your process account. So any cost you debit, and then the only other thing that you debit in the process account is abnormal gain. So if you have a gain now, that one you shall debit. The rest you shall not debit, but you shall put it on a credit side. That is normal loss, abnormal loss, output, the closing work in progress. So many get a part of 49, 11, 530. Is that it? 49, 11, 530. So hopefully you find out 49, 11, 530. Hopefully in a balance. I think that one is fine. So that one marks the end of this class. So we shall meet maybe tomorrow. So also tomorrow we shall tomorrow we shall do taxation from 7 to 9. We shall do capital allowance. So we shall do at least 4 questions. So we shall do the one for last sitting, for the last 4 sittings, in that order.
There are notes that you can share. I go through them.
Yeah, I was to scan for you, but nimeshikana, but I will scan for you tomorrow. Acha nitaenda nichukue kitabu nikuskanie. The one which I natumianga kufunza in class.
Okay.
Yeah, but for now unajua watu wako holiday, huwa nafunza hapa Moi. But so we shall resume on August once the student comes in. So for now, I'm just doing recordings also. So share with your friends so that they can subscribe. And everyone benefit. But remember, the video will be there for limited period. So the video will be in a private domain after that. Anyway, that one is all. Have a good night. We shall talk. Good night.